Welcome to IPL Deep Dive, the podcast that brings you expert analysis, thrilling match highlights, and all the drama of IPL 2025. Whether you're a diehard fan or just catching the cricket fever, we've got you covered with in-depth insights and engaging discussions. Get ready to explore the heart of the action with your hosts, Mike and Michelle, as they dive into today's match analysis. It's time to step onto the pitch and join the conversation.
So the Rajasthan Royals, they just pulled off a pretty dramatic win, a 6-run victory against Chennai Super Kings. But looking at the scorecard, something really caught my eye. Jofra Archer, their main strike bowler, only bowled 3 overs. I mean, in a game that close, holding back a guy like Archer just seems, crazy. What do you think?
Yeah, it does seem a bit strange, doesn't it? You'd think with a bowler like Archer, you'd want him out there as much as possible, especially towards the end of a tight match. Definitely something we need to look into.
Yeah, for sure. And that's exactly what we're doing today. A listener sent in some great analysis from after the match, all about this RR and CSK game. So we're going to try to figure out how Rajasthan managed to win. And a big part of that is figuring out this whole Archer situation, why only 3 overs. And of course, we got to look at how the other players performed too.
We have some excellent resources to help us with that. We've got transcripts from CricBuzz Live and ESPN Criscinfo Timeout, both on YouTube. Really in-depth discussions about the match. So we'll be pulling out the most interesting bits to paint a clear picture of what went down and, most importantly, why it all matters.
Exactly. Think of this as a crash course on this super interesting match. We'll go through the commentary, point out those surprising moments, and hopefully shed some light on the decisions that shaped the outcome. And remember, this was a nail-biter. Rajasthan barely scraping by against a tough CSK side, with Dhoni and Jadeja really turning up the heat at the very end.
Oh yeah, those final overs were intense.
Yeah.
But to really understand why Rajasthan won, we have to go back to the start and see how both teams approached their batting and bowling.
Right. And the first thing that jumps out from both our sources is how differently the teams performed in the power play. Rajasthan came out swinging and set a really strong base right off the bat.
And the difference is striking. CricBuzz highlighted this. Rajasthan scored 79 for 1 in their power play. Chennai, only 42 for 1. That's a 37-run gap in just the first 6 overs. In T20, that can be massive.
It is. It's huge. And the CricBuzz commentators were pretty blunt about it. They basically said Chennai's weak power play lost them the game. Lisa, one of the commentators, made a really interesting point. She said CSK faced a whopping 20 dot balls in those first 6 overs. 20. In T20 cricket, where every ball counts, that many dot balls early on is like shooting yourself in the foot. For those not familiar with cricket lingo, a dot ball is when a batter doesn't score any runs off a delivery.
Right. So every dot ball in the power play is a wasted opportunity to capitalize on those fielding restrictions.
Yeah.
Where there are fewer fielders outside the inner circle. And this actually ties into a larger pattern for CSK. ESPN Criscinfo pointed out that they've consistently been the slowest scoring team in the power play all season, averaging just 7.4 runs per over. Starting slow like that just puts so much pressure on the rest of the batting order to catch up.
It's like they're always playing catch-up from the very beginning. Okay, so Rajasthan gets off to a flying start. Now let's talk about the really head-scratching part of Jonthadis. Jofra Archer, he bowls 3 overs, takes 1 wicket for only 13 runs, even bowls a maiden over. Seems like a great performance.
Oh, it was a really strong start. The CricBuzz guys were impressed too. They said he was firing in with real intensity in his run-up, getting a wicket and bowling a maiden over in the power play. That's exactly what you want from your top bowler. Sets a great tone for the team.
Exactly. So it was really surprising when Michael on CricBuzz Live said he was shocked that Archer didn't bowl the 19th over. That's second to last over where games are so often won or lost.
Yeah, Michael felt like Rajasthan might have missed a chance there. He even suggested that maybe they didn't fully trust Archer to defend runs under pressure in those final overs. Which is weird, right? Because he bowled so well earlier. Why wouldn't you put your best guy out there when it matters most?
Exactly. It's baffling. Maybe they felt more comfortable with Sandeep Sharma for those final crucial overs. He's known as their go-to death over bowler, and he did bowl at the 20th.
The ESPN Criscinfo folks also talked about this. Captain Ryan Parag's decision to use Tushar Deshpande in the 19th and Sandeep Sharma in the 20th instead of Archer. They speculated on the reasons. Sandeep Sharma is considered a death over specialist, so that probably played a big role.
Right. Makes sense to go with the specialist. But Michael on CrickBuzz also threw out this interesting idea. Maybe they were worried about Archer's pace. He bowls really fast, and maybe they thought experienced players like Dhoni and Jadeja would be able to use that pace against him in those later overs.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. While pace is definitely a weapon, being able to vary your pace and bowl with pinpoint accuracy becomes even more important in those final overs when batsmen are swinging for the fences. Maybe the captain felt that Sandeep Sharma, with his slower balls and variations, would be more effective against those set batsmen in that pressure cooker situation.
A valid point. It still feels like a gamble, though, especially with Archer looking so good early on. Maybe trusting your informed strike bowler even when the pressure's on might have been a better move psychologically, regardless of Sharma's specialization.
It's definitely something to think about. A bowler in good form is going to have a lot of confidence. So moving on, Archer bowls brilliantly but sparingly. Let's talk about the guy who really took charge for Rajasthan, Nitish Rana.
Yeah, what an inning.
Absolutely. Nitish Rana was the clear standout for Rajasthan with the bat.
Yep.
CrickBuzz named him their coolest performer and player of the match for his amazing 81 runs off just 36 balls.
They called it a glorious innings, and they weren't kidding. He was hitting boundaries everywhere, completely unfazed by both spin and pace bowling. The CrickBuzz commentary was full of praise. They said he toyed with the Chennai bowlers and played proper cricketing shots. It sounded like he was seeing the ball in slow motion.
He really was in the zone. And they highlighted how consistent he's been lately and how crucial this explosive innings was for Rajasthan's win. The commentators even said that if Rana keeps playing like this, Rajasthan has a real chance of going far in the tournament.
Yeah, having a batsman like that in the middle order can completely change the game in T20. But ESPN Cricinfo had a slightly different take on Rana's performance. They said that while it was obviously match-winning, it might have also hidden some underlying weaknesses in Rajasthan's batting.
That's a good point. While Rana was incredible, maybe his performance overshadowed some inconsistencies in the rest of the Rajasthan batting lineup. Relying too much on one player isn't a great long-term strategy. It might be something Rajasthan needs to work on.
Yeah, true. So Rana was the hero, but Rajasthan still has some batting questions to answer. Now let's look at Chennai. Sounds like they have bigger problems, especially with their batting.
The analysis from both our sources points to some real trouble for CSK's batsmen. CrickBuzz pointed out their ongoing struggles with the opening partnership. They've only scored a measly 19 runs combined in their last 3 matches. In T20, getting off to a strong start is so important, and they just haven't been able to do that.
Yeah, no kidding. And this weak opening stand has obviously sparked a lot of debate about their batting order. CrickBuzz mentioned the possibility of bringing in Devon Conway at the top, and ESPN Cricinfo also talked about maybe bringing Ruturaj Gaikwad back as an opener. Seems like they're desperate to find a combination that works.
ESPN Cricinfo went even further. They said that CSK's whole batting lineup looks shaky and that they lack depth in the middle order, guys who can really accelerate the scoring or rescue the team from a bad start. They also brought up a pretty shocking stat. CSK hasn't successfully chased a total over 180 in the IPL for the past 6 years. That's a long time to have that kind of mental block.
6 years? Wow, that's a serious issue. And Ruturaj Gaikwad himself even said something about maybe batting at number 3, which made the CrickBuzz folks think there's some real uncertainty about who should open the innings. ESPN Cricinfo also talked about CSK's general batting strategy, which is to try to bat through the entire 20 overs. But it seems like that approach isn't working so well anymore, especially when they're losing momentum early on.
Yeah, the full 20 strategy relies on having well-set batsmen and plenty of firepower in those last few overs. If they're not getting a good start or their middle order isn't scoring consistently, that strategy becomes almost impossible to pull off. Plus, bowlers are getting better and better at closing out games, making those late chases even harder.
It sounds like Chennai really needs to figure out their batting if they want to stay competitive in this tournament. So let's quickly touch on a few other key performances and decisions that stood out in Rajasthan's win.
Wanendu Hasaranga's bowling for Rajasthan deserves a shout-out. Both CrickBuzz and ESPN Cricinfo gave him credit for taking 4 wickets for 65 runs. Yeah, his economy rate was a bit high, but taking wickets in those middle overs is huge. Really disrupts the other team's momentum and stops them from building partnerships. The commentators think he could be a really dangerous bowler for RSR as the tournament goes on.
Right, those middle over wickets can turn the game around. And what about the captaincy in this match? Rain Parag for Rajasthan, Ruturaj Gaikwad for Chennai.
Yeah, both captains were under the microscope in the post-match analysis. ESPN Cricinfo specifically mentioned Rian Parag's bold decisions, especially his bowling changes towards the end of the innings. As for Ruturaj Gaikwad, there were questions about some of his tactical choices, especially with Chennai's ongoing batting order problems. But one of the Crickbuzz commentators did make a good point, given the players he had available. Gaikwad's bowling changes weren't necessarily bad. Sometimes it comes down to the bowlers executing those plans.
True. A captain can only do so much. Oh, and one last thing about Rajasthan. Everyone was raving about their fielding.
Yeah, Crickbuzz called it a tremendous performance with some magnificent catches.
Yeah.
They singled out Shimon Hetmeyer and Captain Rian Parag for making some incredible plays in the field. In those close T20 games, great fielding can make all the difference, saving runs, creating chances for wickets.
Okay, so bringing it all together, what are the main takeaways from this deep dive into the Rajasthan Royals versus Chennai Super Kings match? Keeping in mind our focus on Archer's limited overs and Rana's big innings.
I'd say the main things are, Rajasthan won this important match because they dominated the power play, and Nitish Rana, who is indeed a Rajasthan Royals player, had a truly amazing innings. But the decision to only let Jofra Archer bowl 3 overs, even though he started so well, is definitely a bit puzzling. Makes you wonder about the team strategy and how much they trust him in those high-pressure moments at the end of the game. As for Chennai, their opening partnership is a real problem, and their middle order isn't strong enough to consistently chase down big totals.
And for me, the big takeaway is that contrast between what you expect from a world-class bowler like Archer. You expect him to bowl those crucial overs at the end and how he was actually used. It really shows how complicated and strategic captaincy and match management can be in high-pressure cricket. Plus, it emphasizes how one amazing individual performance, like what we saw from Nitish Rana, can decide a game and maybe even hide other problems a team might have.
Exactly. It's a good reminder that cricket is more than just stats and data. There's still room for surprise and those moments of individual brilliance that can change everything.
So for you, our listener who wants to understand this match quickly and thoroughly, this analysis gives you a real inside look at the key factors in a close T20 game. The importance of the power play, how one player can completely change the game, and the fascinating strategic decisions that go into how players are used, even when it's a star like Jofra Archer.
Exactly. You've learned a lot about the tactics and nuances of this match without having to watch the whole thing or read through tons of commentary.
All right, here's something to think about. In a sport that's becoming more and more focused on data and analytics, how much should a captain's gut feeling and their confidence in a player influence those big decisions during a game, especially when those decisions go against what the data might suggest, like limiting a star bowler's overs? Did Rajasthan actually make the right call with Archer, or were they just lucky that other things went their way? It's something to ponder until our next deep dive.